2,048 miles through 14 states. Our guest today is Edward Kuni, of Wilkes-Barre, outdoor conservation editor for the Wilkes-Barre Sunday Independent. Mr. Kuni, a retired postal worker, fulfilled a lifelong ambition this year by hiking the entire distance. He not only completed the 2,000-mile trail this year, but backtracked another 500 miles to complete a trek started last year that was cut short when the waters of Hurricane Agnes inundated his home in the Linwood section of Wilkes-Barre. If Mr. Kuni is not the only one to have hiked the entire distance twice in 2 consecutive years, he certainly is one of the few. Ed, welcome to News Conference.
Thank you, Bob.
Joining me on the panel today are Jay Christopher, Sports Director of WNEP TV, and John Foster, WNEP's News Manager. Now to begin, John.
Thank you, Bob. And Ed, this is a question, I don't know whether you've heard or not, but a lot of people who followed your trek this year and last through the Sunday Independent and knew that you and I were quite friendly would say anybody would walk 2,000 miles when he doesn't have to has got to be bereft of his senses. Has anybody told you the same thing?
Oh, John, I heard that plenty of times. Even on trail, I can recall one instance in Fontana Dam, North Carolina. I met the security officers that watched the TVA installation there, protected from sabotage and so forth. And so I was invited to Lieutenant Hawkins' home this past time I was going through. And I said, okay, I'll drop over after dinner. He said, no, heck, come on, we'll have dinner. No, I said, I always eat out. And I said, I'll see you after dinner. So anyway, I went at this home, and it was a cold, blistery night, and towards the end of March, right before you enter the Smoky Mountains, like that's the southern entrance of Smoky Mountains at Fontana Dam, North Carolina. So we had a few snacks and a couple cups of tea, and about 8:30 I told Mrs. Hodkins, I said, well, I better take off. She said, no, you're not. I said, why? She said, come here, I'll show you. She took me down her hallway, opened the bedroom door in a nice, beautiful bed. She said, you're sleeping here tonight, my son's room. He's in college now, and you're... I said, Mrs. Hodkins, I got news for you. I think Frank will tell you I'd never sleep in a home or a motel or a rooming house, whether I have to pay for it or whether it's free. So she looked at me, isn't that bed good enough for you? I said, yeah. I said, isn't that right, Frank? She said, yeah. And she looked like me, like you said, John, there's maybe something wrong upstairs. And the way she looked, she said, you must be some kind of a nut, you know. But anyway, I left, and when I went out in that cold night, I said, I think I must be some kind of a nut to go out in a night like this when there's a night.
What really gave you the urge to do this? What brought it about, and what kept you going all those miles?
Well, John, it's been on my mind for 25, 30 years, and I thought, well, the only way I'll be able to accomplish is work till I retire, because, you know, raising a family now, you're not just going to tell a wife, well, I'm offering a job for 5, 6 months, I'm going on a mountain trail, you know. So I had to wait till last March the 1st, I retired from the Wilkes-Barre Post Office after 28 years of service in the Postal and 2 years in the Army, which gave me the quota of full retirement. So as soon as I was eligible, I retired, and I told my wife, well, everything is paid for. Now the home is paid for. We have a 16-year-old home. That's paid for now. Everything, daughter's raised, and she's on her own. I said, so away you go. She said, well, I know your mind is set up, so go ahead. So I left them April the 2nd, and June the 21st, I had to return to wiped out home and all worldly possession. So just in one sweep of one day, what can happen to a person.
Say your ambition, Ed, was dating back 25, you say even 30 years?
Yeah.
What kicked this off, this Appalachian Trail? The only time, really, I must confess that one would hear about the Appalachian Trail would be in the history books or a study of the eastern seaboard here. What kind of kicked this thing off in your mind? Like you say, well, one day we're going to climb Pikes Peak. There has to be some point in your mind where you begin to say, well, I'd like to do it. What point in mind and what kicked this off for you?
Well, Jay, it's dating back 25, 30 years. I got this literature. I've always been interested in outdoor life. In fact, I wanted to go to be a forest ranger in 32 when I graduated from high school, but my father was deeply in debt, the heart of the Depression, and he said, heck no, I'm getting you a job on the state highway through politics to get a good Republican state highway job. And I got it all right. It's cracking 25 feet of rock every day on the Gifford Pinchot roads. I don't know if you young fellas can recall that, but that's all. We got 45 cents an hour for clacking with a sledgehammer, big boulders into small stones. And if you didn't crack the 25 feet a day, you got your walking papers. So that was the end of my education, but I always was interested. So I took correspondence courses from Penn State, different ends of journalism and forestry and all like that. So I got a little link, and then I got the yearn to make this Appalachian Trail, which started in 1922. They started breaking the first part that was up in New York State. I just forget the section, Palisades, I guess. They started, and then they started linking up with the Long Trail up in Vermont, and maintained by the Green Mountain Club in Vermont. That's 260-mile section, and then they joined up with the Appalachian Mountain Club and the Maine Mountain Club that runs to Mount Katahdin through Maine and White Mountains.
So that really lit the fuse for you then way back when. Ed, you'll be turning, what, 60 this October?
Just next month, yeah.
That's not a young springer. I think we can both agree. Ed, you hiked this 2,000-mile plus tour. How'd you stack up health-wise during the course of all this walking? Did you have any moments of question in your mind if your body would hold up?
Well, Jay, I was all through it. I was in good physical shape. Only on St. Patrick's Day, March the 17th, I was leaving Chattahoochee National Park in Georgia, entering North Carolina, and the temperature plummeted to 5 above zero, and with a 30, 40-mile-an-hour steady wind blowing. I had woolen gloves and a good nylon hood, and I had my rain suit on, in fact, not warm, but that night I found out all my fingertips had frozen, but I put it aside. Heck, I'd done a lot of deer hunting in Pennsylvania. They froze there a lot of time. So, but after they were numb for about over a month, I started worrying. I said, hell, they never were numb that long up in the Pennsylvania creeks of deer hunting. I said, maybe a few days, they tingle and come back alive. So I finally reached Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. That's the head of where the headquarters of the Appalachian Trail Conference is, and I met the executive director, Colonel Lester Holmes, and he looked at me. He said, Ed, he said, boy, he said, you got terrible-looking fingertips there. Well, in fact, all of them were at that time swollen up about the size of marbles. This middle one was swelling up the size of a golf ball. He said, how about going to the doctor? There's one in Charlestown, West Virginia, about 6 miles. He said, you go down to the fire station, tell them I sent you, and they have a rescue car down there, and somebody will drive it. So I went down there, so one of the boys said, I'll drive you over, and I'm not waiting for you. I said, how come? He said, heck, you'll have to wait 2 or 3 hours. There's only 2 doctors within about 30, 40-mile radius, which he was right. The one waiting room I went in, there were doctors were about a block apart, and I went in, I looked in, there's about 25 in the waiting room, so I went over the other, and they had about 30 in there, so I said, I'll wait here then. So then the doctor looked at him and said, how long does this condition exist? He said, boy, he said, you should have come in when you were numb. I said, Doc, I'm on the mountains, and it's quite an effort to get down to town sometimes. Gee, he said, I don't know about this one. It was this middle one. He said, what's going to happen to that? But he said, I'll give you a shot of penicillin or prescription for 100 antibiotic pills. He said, that ought to bring him around. He said, aren't you going to lance this middle finger? He said, no, the antibiotics will take care of it. But I waited 2 nights. I seen a little uneasiness in the shoulder from that. So I got my surgical scalp out from my snake kitten. So I lanced myself. A lot of matter come out, but I had restful sleep after that. So it seemed to be hard. It's just numb. Now I have to go and get it checked. But I think I'll save it.
Ed, I know you had some pictures taken while you were on the trail, and maybe we could look at those at this time, and you can tell us what the situation was and where they were taken and how long you'd been on the trail at that point.
That scene was, I looked like the old man and the typical old man of the mountain. Everybody said, boy,
You've been gone in Treasure Island.
Kuni looks so old and weary. So I told my wife, I said, tell them folks that say that I wasn't on any picnic when I was on trail. So that was taken by a professional photographer. He's out on assignment in the White Mountains. I just come down Mount Garfield that morning. And that stocking cap that I'm wearing that was given to me by a French-Canadian boy I met on the trail. He thought with my bald head I'd be a little cold in the mountains. So it come to good use on many a cold night for me.
You had mentioned, Ed, that you didn't normally wear a hat.
No, but on the cold days, I wore that cap. That was a cold. In fact, I slept up in the summit of that Mount Garfield. That's a little over a mile high, and there's always prevailing winds that blow, cold winds, always from Canada. The winds blow, and that's another scene he took. I mean, that's a better look at the cap I wore. So I kept it all along. In fact, I even use it at night to sleep when I just slept under the stars in my sleeping bag.
And how did you take care of your food problems? What arrangements did you make?
Bob, I had 14 stops, and they were at village posts. I was at either I traversed or adjacent to the trail. The furthest post I had to get off the trail was about 3 to 5 miles.
You had mapped these out before?
Oh yeah, they were all arranged. All my wife had to do was put two clean shirts, 6 pairs of socks, and 2 sets of underwear, and a set of pajamas. And that the pajamas, that was really a kick out of these backpackers. They, why not, Ed? Why in the world do you wear pajamas at night? I said, why do you put a cover in your sleeping bag? Well, to protect, we only get I said, that's why I eliminate the cover, because it makes the sleeping bag too bulky, and I use pajamas in place of that, because once you get the lining soil in the sleeping bag, well, you might as well throw the sleeping bag. There's very few methods yet that you can clean it with a goose-down sleeping bag. So they always have these protectors inside it so you can have the bag longer.
What sort of food did you eat on the trail?
It was mostly consists of freeze-dry food.
Did you kind of live off the earth?
I supplemented myself very much. Now, this year, the rattlesnakes are very scarce. Copperheads I won't eat. I suppose they're good eating, but they were never proven to be good, but I would test them someday. But last year, I had 2 rattlesnakes. I only eat the ones that about 2 feet long or bigger than that. They're a little tough and they get a little rancid. Then porcupine hindquarters I ate, and frog legs. They were most plentiful this year in New Hampshire. I didn't even have to go in the swamps to get them. They were right on the path, because the path was always flooding there. Them greenies are jumping all over, and then mushrooms, they were plentiful. I had the old Lithuanian mushroom, the red top there, Jay, you know. They were plentiful. A lot of guys said, boy, we'd like to eat mushrooms, but we're afraid. I said, you stick to the red tops, and you'll be all right.
Well, how did you get, for instance, the porcupines? How did you capture them?
They're very, very easy. That's one of the easiest animals. You know, they just plod along very slow. You can run up to them, hit them in the head with your walking stick, and The only thing, I just took the hindquarters.
How about rabbits and things like that?
Well, I couldn't catch a rabbit. That's too fast for me.
Not on this trip.
I was going to ask how you said you killed 2 rattlesnakes and ate them last year on the trip. I don't imagine walking up behind a rattlesnake and hitting it with your walking stick is the best method. How do you get your rattlesnakes? Use it for the fork stick the old way we did?
No, with the fork stick, I didn't want to take them alive. I'd kill them there and then skin them. Well, last year, I got one right in a 5-footer, and, well, that was too large. He only had 1 fang, no rattlers. I figured he was about ready to die anyway, and he was a little too old. But I skinned the reptile and hung the skin over a tree there because it's a valuable skin, 5 foot one. About the width, it was that big. And he had a little rabbit inside, and that's why he's going in a build-up area in Maryland. And it's funny, like the copperheads and rattles, they seem to like to be around human habitat a lot more than directly up in the forest. I don't know what brings them in, like catch rabbits or kittens or cats, but they seem to prefer. And then up in Maine, there's no poisonous snakes at all in Maine, but plenty of garter snakes. So I can't understand, if garter snakes can survive up there, why can't a poisonous one? But I feel, John, they're killing off too many copperheads and rattlers. That's why they're getting on the endangered list now, I feel.
There are great many clubs that have rattlesnake hunts.
Yeah.
And then
Then they release them,
them out.
Yeah, and we'll see, like up in Game Land 57, they had a hunt here recently. And well, I know where these fellas go. They go to Rattlesnake Den. There's a few up there in the Game Land 57. That's where they catch. They just don't go out in the trail and pick them up. They go to these dens, and that's where they do. Rattlesnakes have a tendency of denning up.
I have a couple of things to ask you, Ed. If you weren't last year, you certainly are this year the dean of all hikers nationally because of your gigantic trip. By this time next year, you made mention of the fact that you'll probably have a book out.
Yeah.
You're writing your daily diary on that. What kind of information or what kind of information would you give a hiker? You've got an awful lot of knowledge in your head now after that 2,000-plus trip. What would you tell a hiker, beginning now, or even a kind of a veteran hiker? Is there anything specific you'd go into?
About
hiking itself.
Well, the first thing I tell them, don't travel alone. And I did. That's right.
So you violated the first rule, huh?
Because there's a couple sections of the trail up the Wildcat Mountain. That's out of Pinkham Notch in New Hampshire, right out of the headquarters, where they had the headquarters of the Appalachian Mountain Club. And there's 2 places I almost had to turn back that I couldn't climb up there with full field, with full gear. Without a pack, there's one place I couldn't squeeze between a boulder and a ledge, it's almost perpendicular, And so I said, well, the Lord's been with me so far, so there's a big boulder alongside it, and then down alongside of that was straight drop, maybe about 200 feet down the top of some spruce trees. I said, well, the Lord's been with me so far, so I just about 3 days before that, I picked up my resoled and heeled shoes, so I had a pretty good grip on. So there's a little niche in the boulders. I put my left foot in, and I said, with my full strength, I went up and I grasped the top of that boulder with my pack on, and I said, well, here it goes. And I went up over the boulder, and I said, thank you, Lord. And continued. In another section, there's almost perpendicular 2 rock slabs. There's no places on the side to grasp any shrubbery or any trees and all, and so that's where my soles and heels, I went up diagonally, this way, and I turned back on, and I said, if I slide down, so long, pack and everything. But I made that. But I was very happy to meet the head of the trail crew and one of the associate directors of that. On the last day, I was going through their last section, coming back, and I happened to meet them at the Lonesome Pond Hut they have 7 huts on this trail for travelers. And I told them the situation. They said, geez, we heard about that. So, but nothing was ever done about it, you know. So the trail crew foreman was there. He said, Ed, he said, what would you recommend? I said, well, it's like in other sections, a rope or a ladder to aid you to get up over there, which in different sections they either have a wire, mostly wire rope, because the porcupines eats that hemp rope right up, and that you can pull yourself up with the rope, and that's grade 8 for, especially if it's raining, them rocks, you know, the moss cover, they get pretty slippery at times. So I had it in my column. I said, well, you true hikers, when you're going up to Wildcat Mountain, I said, you've come to a rope or ladder. She said, well, thanks, Ed Kuni, you got this fixed up.
How many miles did you average a day, Ed?
Well, overall, it come to 17 miles a day, Jay. I never missed a day. I logged mileage every day. Rain, shine, or snow, I logged
There's
mileage.
been a great resurgence of hiking, backpacking in the country in the last few years. Ed, how many people did you really meet on the trail and walking certain sections of the trail?
Oh, boy, I just couldn't tell you. They were scarce during the cold and rainy weather, but August, it really was phenomenal to see the number of hikers just when the weather was clearing up. I only, on my backward trend through May, I only had three rainy days out of the 18 it took me to get the 277 miles out of Maine. Going up in the Maine, I had 12 days of rain out of the 18, and it really rained 2-3 inches maybe every day, and I was going through that swampland, because the natural terrain up there in Maine is all lakes, swamps, and streams. And every stream, there's one river you gotta, when the water's high, you gotta get ferried across, and the ferryman charges you $5. And that was interesting, if we have time to say a word on that. When I got there, it was about 2 days before the 4th of July. I finally got the tension across the river, and boy, she was bank high then. I said, shall I swim across? No, I said, no, I better wait to get attention. And they float pup logs down there to the mill, you know, the river's full of pup logs. See, in fact, the paper companies up there own everything. The highways, the rivers, and everything's owned by these paper companies. So finally, this ferryman, I was surprised to see him come across the river in a rowboat with oars. Holy God, I thought at least an outboard motor, you know, he'd have. So he come across with his grandson. So the first thing he said to me, he said, can you swim? I said, yeah. He said, I'm not taking you across unless you can swim. I said, yeah. He said, take the pack off. I said, no, I got it loose. I said, but I got this nylon rope on in case we get thrown in the drink. I said, I'm too close to Mount Katahdin to lose that pack now. But we got safely across.
What sort of expense did you run into? I mean, you've hiked 2,500 miles this past summer. How much did it cost you?
What do you mean that? My food line?
Your food and things like that. Incidental
All
expenses.
expenses.
Oh, well, I'd say with my food, that freeze-dried food and different things, I've lost canteens and had replaced. Probably about $500, Bob.
Mm-hmm. Did you, outside of the dangers in the trail itself, did you run into anything such as bears or any dangers from the animals outside of the elements?
Well, the most danger was from dogs.
Dogs?
Yeah.
Were they running wild or?
Well, last year I had down in the moonshine country, we call it, and they call it that. That's in North Carolina in the mountain.
Trained dogs down there, eh?
Well, the fact that dogs have to scurry around and go out in the hills and get their own food, you know. But these 7 curs come down. I call them curs. They're a mixture of everything, you know. I'm going through this hamlet of 3 shacks. The Nardee out of Almond, North Carolina, if you know where Almond is. I don't know. But they surrounded me, you know, and I right away over there. Because I think I was going through there a little too early, about 6 in the morning. So I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble, and they surround me, you know, they're snarling, you know, and all. So right away, I swung at 2 of them across their snoots with my walking stick, which I never go on the trail without, though. That's my only protection. You're not allowed to carry any firearms or anything like that. So I think I broke a couple of fangs off, and they turned tail and started to holler with pain, and they turned tail and run, and the other 5 went after. And I'm hollering. You think those people come out of there? Not a whisper. So I passed this year. I made sure it was later in the morning, about 10 o'clock, and still there was no light. But you could smell that mash and things coming down and runs off the mountain.
What did you do when you got wet, Ed? You mentioned that you ran into a lot of rain. What happened? How'd you dry yourself off?
Just wait till a sunny day.
You actually slept in wet sleeping bag and things like that?
Wet till I could come to town and dry it out in the laundromat. The sleeping bag was wet, and it's remarkable that one, when he hikes the mountain, never catches a cold. See, that's proof that colds is a respiratory disease. You get it from another, so you're up there without any humans around with a cold, and you never contract a cold, wet, shivering, or anything, you know.
How many pairs of shoes did you wear out, Ed?
Well, I had 2, John, that I had one home in reserve, and then I'd write my wife, I'd say, well, I'm my first pair I'm wearing are wearing out pretty good. How about sending the ones that were resoled and healed? So she'd send me. When she did, I'd mail back the other pair to get resoled and healed. And that way I got through with 2 pair of shoes.
Ed, I know a 3rd grade class in Kingston, a teacher had a project concerning your hike. Maybe before the program concludes, you might show us one poster that you picked out. And this is a poster depicting, if you can show it toward this camera over here.
This is portraying me going up one of the many mountain peaks up in the White Mountains. It's from Mrs. Margaret Hammer's 3rd grade Main Street School in Kingston. She had all the children in the class, which I must have got about 20. And this one happened to be, this sketch was made by Barbara Hillard in Mrs. Hammer's 3rd grade class. Of course, she's in 4th grade now, but she had everyone in the class, and that's literally the way I was going up these mountain peaks. There's so many mountain peaks in the New Hampshire White Mountain ranges that they've run out of names for them. They name them by 1, 2, 3, 4, or the alphabet, A, B, C.
And at this point, I'm afraid I'm going to have to call the program to conclusion and thank our guest, Mr. Edward Kuni, who has hiked the Appalachian Trail for 2 consecutive years. Thank you for joining us. I invite you to be with us again next Sunday at this time on News Conference, when we expect to have as our guest actor Vincent Price.